everybody, welcome to the launch of issue 10 of Spelt magazine. We are super proud of this issue. We're really pleased to have got it out into the world. There it is. Look at it, looking beautiful yellow cover. We had some issues as usual, mostly because we had to put out a statement about plagiarism, and that delayed things, and it delayed the competition starting and all that sort of thing. And it's never a nice thing to do. It's always a bit of a horrible thing when you come across potential plagiarism within the poetry community, because it sort of devalues everyone's work, and it devalued our work that we'd put into the competition, to the magazine. So it was a horrible thing to happen, but we did it. We remain unfunded. We did have a little crowdfunder to get the next issue out, and we have managed to get the next issue out, and we will be getting another issue out after that, thanks to the generosity of people giving a few pence, a couple of quid here and there, which is really nice, and we appreciate it so much. A few things you might be interested to know: that Spelt now has a Substack page on which we are going to be putting our brand new Spelt podcast. Sharon Black, who is going to be our guest reader tonight, is our first podcast guest. You will notice, Sharon, that the podcast hasn't gone up yet, and that's my fault because I have been challenged by the technology. But I think I've cracked it, and we are nearly there. So I'm hoping that Monday will be the day that we get, Monday, bank holiday, will be the day that we get Sharon's interview up, and it's really good. It's really interesting. So if you want to sign up to the Substack, please do. It's free. I mean, there is a place you can donate on the Substack if you want to, but it's free for everyone anyway. So that's really good. I don't think I've got anything else to say apart from a little bit of housekeeping. Your mute button and your stop video button are both on your left-hand side of the bottom of your screen. I will mute everyone once we get going, and then I will unmute you when I ask you to read, ask the contributors to read. So that's what's going to happen there. If you get knocked offline, use the same link to get back in, and I shall meet you back here. I'll do the same thing. Do feel free to chat in the little chat box down at the bottom there. It's just off center. If you want to say nice things about the contributors and all that sort of thing, you can please feel free to do that. You can save the chat by going to the three little dots and pressing those, and there's a save option on there, and it will save it to your computer, somewhere to your computer. This is a recorded event, so if you don't want your face to be shown on the screen, do switch your video off, and there will be a comfort break about halfway through, so you can have some comfort at that point. I think that's it. Is there anything else? Have I forgotten anything?
Only one thing. We've already had our first sighting of a cat on screen, so if you do have cats, then please do show them proudly to the screen, because my cats refuse to enter. They will just stand at the door and howl at me for ignoring them, and I would love to show them off to people, but for some reason it's the one thing they refuse to do. They refuse to be on camera in a Zoom call. I don't know why. I don't know if this is a religious thing or what it is with cats, but mine refuse, and so I'm filled with envy whenever anybody else's cat gets involved on a Zoom call. But do feel free to show off your cats. I know that's not helpful, Wendy, but you're welcome.
No, we're always up for a Spelt cat invasion. All right. By the way, this is Steve. I should introduce you to Steve. Steve is he's my co-editor. He's the technical wizard. He does the urban poetry stuff. He does the layout for the magazine. Steve is massively hard working, and he's also a poet in his own right, and he's going to be one of our guest readers tonight. And Helen is around somewhere. There she is. Hi, Helen. Helen is our poetry film editor, and she works very hard for the magazine as well. And she's brilliant. She does fantastic workshops. So if you ever fancy having a go at poetry film, look Helen up, because she does brilliant poetry film workshops. Go along to one. All right, let's make a start then. I'm gonna cross out my little thing so I know where I am. Right. So, coming to this glorious edition of the magazine, first up, we have got Leslie James, who's going to read The Marshfield. Leslie. Will you make yourself known to me? Leslie? Is that a guinea pig? Leslie, are you here? Leslie. Steve, can you see Leslie?
She's literally just said she's coming.
Yeah, I had a message from her saying that she was coming.
There
Just
isn't a
posted
Leslie
something.
here yet.
Okay, well, that's a excellent start to the evening. I'm going to assume that she is going to be here at some point. I know she had to leave early, but all right, we'll keep an eye out for Leslie, and we shall move on to Alison. Oh, Alison's definitely here. Let me just find you in the
Hello,
magazine.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Alison. Now, let me introduce you to Alison, who has written this fantastic, beautiful piece for the magazine called Flatlands. I'm going to read your bio out, Alison, to introduce you.
Okay.
Alison Locke's writing connects an inner world with a love of nature through poetry, creative nonfiction, and short stories. She is the author of several collections of both poetry and short fiction, and her poetic sequence of personal transformation, Lure, was broadcast on the BBC Radio 3 programme Between the Ears. Her forthcoming collection, Thrift, will be published in 2024 by Paywell Press. And I've read Lure. I haven't yet read Thrift. I think I've got a copy actually downstairs. And Lure was absolutely stunning. And Alison is such a beautiful writer. She just writes so beautifully. I can't wait to hear her read this out. So what I'm going to do, because I've forgotten to do it already, is I'm going to... Oh, have you already muted people, Steve? Yeah, I think someone's muted people. I'm going to let you get on with it, Alison. And
Yeah,
I'm going to shut up and stop waffling.
I don't think I'm muted, am I?
You are not. Everyone else should be muted.
You can hear me.
You are not.
Okay, I
Thank
have
you,
to
Alison.
bridge this. So, because it's obviously a longer than a 3-minute piece.
Oh,
so...
no, I think we've probably got room for the whole thing.
Oh.
Unless you want to do the abridged one.
Yeah. Whether I can see my pencil markings anyway. But anyway, I'll start. Flatlands. As a child, I would stand with my arms akimbo, trusting my body to the winds that rolled in across the ocean onto the cliffs of the southwest of England. I loved living in a place where the hills behind me seemed to roll and tilt towards the sea, as if intent on greeting the flow of air with open arms. Since then, I've lived in many places, but only one where the land was almost entirely flat. It was the east of Essex, where the North Sea creeps into the creeks, where every morning incoming of the tide sways the fronds of samphire. I had moved away from my beloved Devon, and I was pregnant with my first child. At night, I dreamed of Devon country lanes, lush with a million wild flowers, woodlands scented with wild anemone, ransoms, and bluebells. The landscape of the east of Essex is quite flat, and to me, in my condition, it seemed that my growing belly was the only undulation in an ironed-out land. It was as if I was in the wrong place, and nature did not know what to do with me. Despite my misgivings, there was one magical moment. I remember it as if it was yesterday, and not 40 years ago. A memory of utter simplicity still imprinted on my mind. The nearest bus stop was between my home and the nearby village, though there was no sign or post in the ground to mark the spot, only a cursory indent on the edge of the field, known only to locals and hopefully to the bus driver. I was waiting for the bus bound for Southend-on-Sea, a bus that only passed this way twice a day during the weekdays and not at all at weekends. I was on my way to the local hospital at Rochford to attend my monthly antenatal appointment. I arrived at the stop in plenty of time, just in case the bus should be earlier than scheduled. But I waited for what seemed like an hour, my ankles aching, the extra weight of my body pressing into the earth. But it was summer, and the weather was perfect, warm but not too hot, and I was enjoying having the time to myself. I remember thinking, here I am, just me and the land and the baby inside me. As I stared out across the fields, waiting for the bus to arrive, Something happened, and yet nothing really happened. The corn was growing imperceptibly, the speedwell and vetch were in flower, and a crow sidled across the road towards me, tap-tapping the ground with its great black beak. I had heard my baby's heartbeat at the clinic on my last visit, and now I could sense something else, a flow, a current of change within, a flutter, a shift of something more than fluid through arteries and veins. I held my breath and listened, not with my ears, but with my heart. I felt my baby stir for the first time. And there was movement from beyond the walls of my womb. A mirage of flickering light spread out before me, and the corn began to sway with a breeze that riffled through the field. The motion of the corn corresponded with the movement inside me. For one moment, I was lifted, and in the next I was floating across the field over the tops of the corn. My babbling mind emptied, all tension had been taken away. I was part of everything around me, supported by the air, the earth, the growing vegetation, the sky. It was such a beautiful feeling, and I was so overwhelmed that when the bus finally arrived, I had tears falling down my cheeks. I paid my fare to the disinterested driver and took a seat on the otherwise empty bus. I looked out of the window as we pulled away and smiled to myself. The land was the same as always. Miles of unhedged fields and acres of corn ripening under a blue sky. But something had changed. I was no longer an intruder in a foreign land, an interloper in a place I did not belong. We, the land, my baby and I, had shared a special moment, and I thanked the field of corn for its blessing. Thank you.
That was absolutely beautiful, Alison. It really, really was. It was absolutely gorgeous, and that really was a lovely start to the evening. You write in such a gentle way, with such beautiful movement through your writing. Thank you so much for sharing that, and congratulations.
Thank you, Wendy.
Okay, so next up on my list we have Lauren Thomas. Lauren, do you want to unmute yourself and make yourself known?
Hello.
Hello,
Hi. Hello.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh,
And Lauren's
thank you.
going to read her beautiful poem, The Curlew, and I'm just going to introduce her properly. Lauren Thomas has been published in various online and print publications, including Magma, the New Welsh Review, the London Magazine, and Lighthouse Journal. What a fantastic CV. Her pamphlet, Silver Hair Tales, was published in 2021. She has an MA in poetry writing from Newcastle University with the Poetry School, London, and is one of the founding editors of the new online journal, Black Iris. I will look out for that. She can be found on Twitter, Lauren My Writes. And Lauren, I am so looking forward to hearing you read this beautiful poem. So take it away.
Thank you. I can add Spelt to my CV now, so that's exciting. The Curlew. Its cry cuts through Afon Hafren, through the swirl and wheel of gulls, and we, a congregation, an ancient lineage of waders, bathe in the lustration of the rising call. Moving along the black lines of mud-milled breakers, trickling tidal paths, the curlew picks through silt for the bristled wall of a lug, crabs of pearl and steel. Its call curls in from the screed, flooding the white sky. It reaches inside us, not bound to us, and with each note decaying into root and reed, we contemplate our wastes, our brevity.
That was stunning. And you read so beautifully as well.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about the doorbell.
It's always the way, isn't it? Well, thank you very much. That was beautiful. Now then, we have got Leslie James has arrived in the building. Leslie, would you like to make yourself known to me?
Hello.
Hello, hi. I'm so glad you could make it.
So sorry
I'm
I'm late.
sorry your internet was playing up. It's lovely to have you here. Would you like to read your piece?
I'd love to.
Okay, well, let me introduce you properly. Leslie has worked in literary magazines and anthologies, including Bored, The Broken Spine, Full House Lit Mag, Spelt, yay! Cardiff Writers 25th Anniversary Anthology, Love the Words Dylan Thomas Anthology, Nor and Newport Stanza Group's Elemental Emergency, shortlisted for a UK Very Short Story Award by Love Reading UK. Leslie won Cardiff Writers Poetry Flash and Article Prizes 2022-2023. She's featured on I Am a Poet, Wage 15. Well, that's a really innovative magazine, is it? Online magazine. And her chapbook, A Walk with Scissors, is published by Infinity Books UK. We are absolutely delighted to have you here, Leslie. Congratulations on being in the magazine. I will let you read your work now. Thank you.
Thank you. This is called The Marsh Field. Who would begrudge a man a hobby in his retirement? Them's when prizes, you keep that bloody catty urn clear. He still wears his farmer's brown paper bag overalls to clean his pond and feed those fucking fish. These days, without his shotgun, he looks more like an ironmonger. It's only her next door and me that's left of all us old uns now. God, I've seen some changes run by here. He thrusts his belly forward, takes a straddle stance, plonks knuckles, one on each fat hip. He's right, of course. The biggest growth in these parts now is astroturf. Hot tubs emerge from gardens like mushrooms. 50 detached houses adorn a field where the slowworms used to be. The small wood full of bats grubbed up to make a turning circle for cars in the new close. And I should know, he laughs, because it was me what sold him the land. Some slowworms found a home with me. They breed in the warmth of compost and mate under the shed. Although I do my best for bats, they're not helped by floodlit fire pits and concrete patios. Herons, evicted from the plashy bog, moved to neighbouring reens, I hope. I look at the new houses towering above us, raised up on floating foundations and driven piles, essential for the build on this wetland. Outlined in 5 pale strokes on the roof apex, a heron materializes like a pterodactyl gargoyle, lancing down in watercolour. It spears a koi.
That was fantastic. I love it. I love a swearing creative writing as well. Hurrah, hurrah for swearing. Thank you so much. You read it so perfectly. Just gorgeous. Thank you. Okay, next up on the reading, we've got Tori Pearman. Tori, make yourself
Hello.
known to me.
Hello.
Hello, hi. Nice to have you with us tonight. Really pleased to see you. Really pleased. And I'm really looking forward to you reading from your piece in the magazine. What my London friends don't know, I just absolutely love this poem. It's just lovely. It's brilliant. I'll stop waffling. I'm going to introduce you properly now. Tori Pearman grew up in a tiny village in Worcestershire and now is based in London. Her poetry explores themes of empathy, identity, living with chronic illness and the body, all my favourite themes. She was the finalist in the People's Poem Competition in 2023. Tori can be found on Instagram at Tori Pearman and online at toripearman.com, where she reviews books by disabled authors. We need more of that. Thank you so much. I will let you read your poem now. Thank you.
Thank you. The poem is called What My London Friends Don't Know. The fruit that's in season, the time the livestock is culled, the magic of forests so vast they remain unknown, the reality of a farmer with animals to protect, that the rivers keep flooding and we are not prepared. Harvest Festival, May Day, annual fete, doing something simply for local communities' sake, that there are two different kinds of countryside estates and food banks do not reach people many miles away. Apple varieties, Gladstone, Russet, John O'Gold. Pick up local bakers' crumble when you get your petrol. That how we consume is impacting how we grow food. The view of the Worcestershire Hills at sunrise, sunset, and noon. That I dubbed over my accent until it felt natural. My impression of every city, environmental collateral. To get the education, the job, the front door and bricks, I had to shed my skin of moss, wildflowers and sticks.
Bravo, just absolutely stunning. And I love to see work that uses sort of a structured form to enhance the content, and I just absolutely love that. Everything about it, the message behind it, how you've gone about presenting it, how you've written it, the cadence of it, just wonderful. I'm so pleased and proud to have it in our magazine. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on, we have Penny Sharman. Are you there? Make yourself known to me.
Hi, Wendy.
Hello, hi.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. It's lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you as well. And thank you.
You're quite welcome. I'm really pleased to have you in the magazine. Always pleased to see your little face pop up on Zoom, Penny. Okay, let me introduce you properly. Penny Sharman started writing poetry in her 50s during her menopause and found her voice for the first time as a creative force. We need more of that, Penny. We need more older people, older women in poetry. She is a published poet, photographer, artist, and therapist. She is inspired by wild landscapes and relationships between the seen and unseen. Beautiful. Penny has an MA in creative writing from Edge Hill University. She has had poems published in magazines such as Spelt, hurrah for Spelt, The Interpreter's House, Strix, The North, Finnish Creatures, Orbis, Ink, Sweat and Tears, and Dyslexia. And I'm going to let Penny do her reading now, and I'm going to sit back and really enjoy it. So thank you, Penny. Take it away.
Oh, thanks very much for choosing this poem. Watching Dad and Auntie Marge fish near Radcott Bridge, 1958. I never had a hankering for catching fish, to follow a family tradition of hook and line. Wet, stale bread squeezed into a tight ball to bait the innocent scaled creatures. But I loved to watch Dad and Marge laugh, take a drag on their cigarettes, some holy communion between siblings. I never nurtured the gall to hold a dying cold fish, a silver beauty in my palms, or tried to prize out the barb from its gawp of fear. I could hear Dad egging me on, but all I could say was, "It must really hurt the fish, Dad." Each time I was relieved when Dad put the fish back in the river, watched the rudd, perch, roach and dace swim away from Dad and me, land monsters on a riverbank.
Penny, that was beautiful. And again, I'm so impressed by the quality of the readings tonight. Penny, you read absolutely beautifully. Just the exact right pace for it. It's just beautiful. Your writing is gorgeous. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Next up, we've got Sarah Stegen. I was going to attempt to pronounce that correctly with the proper
Dutch
G
G.
sound. Dutch G.
It's fine. It's fine.
Fell at the first hurdle. Sorry, Sarah. Sarah. Is
Doesn't
it
matter.
Sarah or Sarah?
It's actually, is
it Sarah
matter.
or Sarah?
It's actually, well, in Dutch it's Sarah, but Sarah is fine.
Sarah. All right. Well, I'm really, really pleased to have you with us tonight, and congratulations on being in the magazine, and congratulations on just being such a wonderful poet. I am just so looking forward. Oh, I know I say this about every poet that comes along, every reader that comes along, but I genuinely, whenever I'm revisiting the magazine and we get to the launch part, it's like revisiting friends. I sort of recognize the poems and the pieces, and I think, oh, great, I'm going to hear the person that wrote it reading it out for us, and it's such a treat because it's so different to reading it on the page. So I'm really, really looking forward to this. Let me introduce you properly, and I will. Someone has requested that I tell you what pages the readers are on. So this is on page 2. Sarah Stegen is a Dutch poet and a non-fiction author who writes about nature, family, and the landscape she lives in. She is a 2022 Rural Writing Institute alumnus run by best-selling authors Catherine Alto and James Rebanks. Sarah works for the Research Centre Arts and Society of Hans University, Groningen. Home is a border clay ridge in the northern Netherlands where her bike shed contains eight bicycles, and where she works on a memoir about apples and autism. That sounds like my kind of book. I am absolutely delighted to have you here with us tonight, and I'm really looking forward to hearing you read, so take it away.
Thank you. Worth keeping. As a teenager, I was baptized in chlorine, together with the boys, the fresh-faced farm lads who drove green tractors and yellow combines by day, eating up the crops like my dad ate his sandwiches for months, always hungry for more. Boys whose swimsuited bodies had sun-kissed borders midway across their arms and legs, who dive-bombed at 6:30 at the forest pool's evening opening hours when they were free and wild, set free from the metal monsters. They pranced around like the squirrels my mom would see when she swam in the earliest hour of the day with the other farm wives. These boys were like sleek cormorants who resurfaced, flicking the hair out of their eyes, and used the pool as mating ground for summer romances that sometimes stretched into winter, sometimes into life. A pool full of testosterone, virile, dangerous waters. Dangerous like the bulls we sisters used to be afraid of that stood solitary in their designated fields, surrounded by barbed wire, nose rings like prehistoric piercings, holding them into submission. Only their genes were worth keeping.
Bravo. That was just wonderful and beautifully read again. Just really, really lovely. Thank you so much. Okay. Next up, we have on page 3 of the magazine, Joseph Nutman. Joseph, can you make yourself known to me?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello, hi, lovely to have you with us.
It's lovely to be here.
I am so looking forward to hearing you read your poem, which is, whenever I do a call up submissions or anything like that, I always say, oh, we want you to tell us something, make the ordinary extraordinary. And I really think this is what this poem does. It takes something ordinary and makes it slightly extraordinary. So I'm really pleased to have this in the magazine. I'm really pleased to have you here tonight to read it. Let me introduce you properly. Joseph writes the majority of his poetry whilst rambling around Hertfordshire at dawn. Much inspiration comes when trying to find pockets of wildness in the expanse of farmers' fields around his home. Though he gets in such a reverie, he keeps missing the sign saying private at certain wood entrances. His poetic voice resides in the tension between nature, psyche, society, and personal history, and that is the best place to be. Okay, I'm going to let you read for us, Joseph. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. That was a lovely introduction. I'm honoured to be here. So this poem is called Another Lost Pair of AirPods in the Countryside. And for the umpteenth time, a small white ossuary gleams with dew in the undergrowth to catch my eye. Interred inside are 2 sesamoid bones. If I had the mind for it, I could become a prospector for these disposable technologies. Instead, I am more than happy to just leave them on a fence post and observe again, with the wryest of smiles, someone's ability to listen getting smaller before being lost altogether.
Thank you so much. I just love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now it is time for our first poetry film of the evening. So I'm handing over to our poetry film editor, Helen. Helen, will you make yourself known to me, please?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello. I'll let
Hi.
you take it from here and do the introductions.
Thanks. Great readings. Yeah, brilliant readings this evening. Yeah, well done, everyone. So poetry film may be unfamiliar to some of you. So what I'll just say what it is. So it's all a part of a poem, plus images, plus sound, merged together on the screen. So it becomes a way of embodying the poem and then using filmmaking and visual language techniques to convey it to the viewer. And I think a good poetry film also captures the energy and kinetics of a poem and harnesses its power. Some poetry films are a genre of film, and some poetry films are a form of poetry, and that often depends on who's making it. And I identified early on in my with poetry film that when words, images, and sound meet, there can be a formation that can intrinsically be described as a form of poetry itself. So a form that's open, that conforms to few set rules or patterns, and with no formal expectations, but nonetheless a form of poetry. And whilst not all poetry films come under the classification of a form of poetry, where they can be considered to do so, they're often made by poets themselves, because the poet knows the meaning, the connections between the words and the sounds. They'll know how to read the line, its length, its pacing, pauses, how the words hold together, ensuring that the line isn't lost in the clamour of colour and sound. And Barry Hollow's film is one of these. It's retained an authenticity, and the boundaries between voice, image, and sound are blurred. And we're going to see Barry's film right now. And while I screen share, I'm going to ask Barry to introduce it by the title, because I've tried all afternoon to say the title in a convincing way, but it's kind of failed me somewhat. And Barry, we're going to show that there's no subtitles on it, so you might need to give a little introduction to it and any words that we particularly need to understand clearly. So I'll leave that with you, Barry, while I start to screen share.
Evening all. Thanks very much for that introduction, Helen. The title of the poetry film is "You've Never Died for a Lichtning Strike Yet," which is I'm from Ayrshire, which is southwest of Scotland. I write a lot of my poetry in my native dialect, but when I originally wrote this poem, I did add an English translation with it, and it's "You've never died from a lightning strike yet." So it's that's probably the main piece through it. I did add captions to this originally, but I've done two versions, one with captions in English and one with captions in Scots. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
You've never died for a lichtning strike yet. The warning came, take your cagoule. as you saunter and stride out into the clouds dramash. Capitulation outflanks wisdom with sage advice, as immediate vision of irony gies levity and conflagrates. Showers soaked in electricity, while said cagoule flaps, neither fit to grun nor shield against shock. The shoe and licht is up, with goosebump wet, judder drench heat to current, and currency currently wades to warmth of hame waters, convulses to peace, while life walks us by the horn, lichten steps to sanctuary.
Beautiful poetry film with so many layers to it, and I just love. I've never known a poem that's got a cagoule in it, so that's pretty cool, I think. So thanks and well done on that poetry film, Barry. Over
Thank
to
you.
the next.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Barry. That was just, I mean, it is so. The thing about poetry film, I think, is the way that it condenses the eye as well as the voice somehow. I don't know how to explain it, but you find yourself more with them with other films, I think, or other types of artwork. I find myself as the poem is being read or the voiceover is happening, I'm so focused on what's happening on the film itself and watching for the rhythms within that film. I just think it's brilliant. I think there's a real skill to it. I'm so pleased that this is something that we're doing with the magazine as well. So well done, Barry. Thank you. And thank you, Helen. Okay, we are on to our first guest reader of the evening, our very own Steve Nash. Are you there, Steve?
I am.
Seance. Hello.
Hi.
I've seen you already today. Hello. It's
Did you know
lovely.
I was here? Did you really think I'd have run away by now?
Maybe. Who knows? Here you are. Here you are with your brand new book out, Nearly Man, and I'm so excited that you are choosing to read from it and give us a reading on the Spelt launch. It's really exciting. It's really exciting because you are a poet and you do so much for the magazine. So it's really nice to be able to provide a little tiny bit of a platform for you. Not that you need it, but it's really nice to be able to celebrate you and all your poetic accomplishments, as well as being the editor of the magazine. So I am going to introduce you properly. Some surprising facts about Steve that you might not know. Dr. Steve Nash is a writer, lecturer, terrible musician, and vampire born in 1520. A widely and internationally published poet, in 2014, Steve won the Sabater Award for Best Spoken Word Performer from a shortlist that included Kay Tempest and Holly McNish. Steve's third full poetry collection, Nearly Man, is published this year, this month, even last month, by Calder Valley Poetry, and he teaches at Leeds Beckett University. Don't think he didn't notice that none of you bought him a card for his 500th birthday. And you can find Steve on page 43 of the magazine. He has done a fantastic poetry prompt for us. And also, we thought it only right to feature one of his poems as well. So there's a poem called River Run Dark in memory of lovely John Foggin, who we lost, poetry community lost recently. So that's really nice. So many lovely things from Steve in the magazine. But now the loveliest thing of all, we get to just sit and listen to Steve read some poems tonight. So thank you, Steve, for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, this feels weird as I am one of the co-editors, obviously, and I'm the one who puts the visual side of the magazine together. So it feels a bit presumptuous to do this, but I promise that Wendy offered, and it was a lovely offer. So I couldn't say no. So this will be the first time I've read any of my own stuff at a Spelt launch. But before I begin, obviously, thank you to all of our contributors, our repeat contributors as well. It's so lovely now that when we're reading out the bios of you, so many of them say Spelt in them. And it's not that we have favoritism in that way. It's just we find ourselves, we really like your work. But I'll crack on with it. So actually, yeah, Just as an aside, that bio is the bio from Spelt magazine and not the bio that comes with the book, where it's mildly more professional, though the word vampire is used in there as well. But yes, this is it. This is Nearly Man from Calder Valley Poetry. We've already heard at least one Calder Valley poet tonight in Alison Locke. Law was with Calder Valley Poetry as well. And I'm really pleased that Bob, who runs Calder Valley Poetry, offered to do this book. It's the second one of mine that he's done. And actually, I won't ramble on too much before the poems, I promise, because I've got to keep to 15 minutes so that I'm not keeping us too long before we can all have a quick break. But there was a version of this book that was going to come out at the beginning of lockdown, and I pulled it because I was going through a bit of a time, let's just say. I lost my mum during lockdown. I was in the middle of a breakup and am now officially divorced. Like, there was a lot going on, and I worried that after losing my mum, this is the most personal book that I've ever written, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I yeah, they engage with a lot of personal things, including the loss of a child that almost was, and things like that. And I worried that if my family read it, they'd possibly see it as some sort of suicide note. And so I pulled it. But bless him, Bob's been so patient with me. It's not the same book by any means, but those themes are still there. But sadly, Bob is closing his doors because he's giving himself a very well-earned retirement, and so he sort of gave me the warning, like, I am shutting the doors. Can I please have that book before I do? And yeah, with a bit of cajoling, he convinced me to get over myself and just put this thing out. Anyway, as Wendy just said, this one doesn't need an introduction. It's the first proper poem in the book, and yeah, it's my Once in Memory of John Foggin, and it's called River Run Dark. Sky cold, sky still, stars the only sign of life. I walked the river, felt it tug on my arm. I met a girl and asked what she was running from. I offered a coin, she shook her head. My pocket will only be picked, she said. I made us a fire, in its glow we slept. I woke to the embers, to her scent and her scarf, to a cracked morning dark sky and the river run dark. And that one, because I didn't say, that one's in Spelt magazine and it's on page 44. So yeah. The next poem, as I said, I've been through a bit of a time of it. One of those times had something to do with me doing what they call in medical terms a coma. I was in a coma. I've got I've got two weird medical conditions that they can't quite put their fingers on. One is a neurological malfunction that means that the electrical activity in my brain doesn't filter away like normal people. It just sort of builds and gives me these really lovely kick-ass migraines now and then, and sometimes they knock me out. I also have a weird mitral defect in my heart that's not a problem enough to do anything about, but when these things sync up, it can cause serious issues. One of them was said coma. But this poem is about that, and in particular, that thing that happens when you've been through a serious medical problem. And I had to learn to sort of walk and talk again and stuff. But at hospitals where they won't discharge you until you can walk up those weird little stage steps that they make you walk up if they know you're living on your own. So yeah, it's sort of about that. It's called Boy Could Dance. When I lift my foot to the first step, I realize my body is no longer mine. There's a story in my family about an overweight boy being cheered and clapped on a dance floor as he moved like Michael Jackson, limbs defying logic and girth. Still, at family weddings, the newer generations stare, hopeful, point, that's him. He's the best dancer. No free bar could ever rekindle that confidence. To forget a room full of eyes and tongues, to gather those feathers to my heels, to skate backwards, turn dance floor into slick treadmill, slide like a searchlight. I demanded Beat It, but he played Thriller, and still those crows murdered to my feet and lifted me. Once you can walk up these steps, we can let you go home, the physio says, wiping my cheek. And I stare at someone else's feet, wondering, how did I forget this? They lead me back to my bed. Maybe tomorrow they'll play the right song. Thank you. It was a weird experience, isn't it, doing a Zoom reading? I the last public reading that I did after, as Wendy said in the intro, like I used to be quite the thing on the performance poetry scene. Not that I was ever a performance poet. I was always more of a page poet, but I'm sure, although we're not supposed to ramble this much between poems because people keep saying they're annoyed by it, I'm sure it was the rambling between poems that made me go from page poet to performance poets in people's eyes, because they thought that it was all pre-planned when actually I was just rambling incoherently, but apparently entertainingly. I don't know. But the last gig that I did before this book came out was way back before lockdown. A gig that Wendy had arranged actually before Spelt was even a thing, at Basement Bar in City Screen. But I had a gig last Wednesday, and it felt really nice to be sort of back up sharing poems in a room that, you know, where you can hear people and chat to people and have a drink with them and things. It was weird and scary, but it was nice. Anyway, this next one, so there's various themes in the book. Some of them, quite a lot of them are hospital themed, but not all of them is it me in that hospital room. Sometimes it's my grandfather or my mother or my ex-partner, etc. But this next one, as soon as I can find it, because it's a very new book, so I'm still not sure, and I'm sure I knew exactly where it was. Yeah, there it is. This one's called Deep Enough to Disappear, and it's about, yeah, that experience that I'm sure many of you have had, where loved ones start to sort of lose themselves a little bit towards the end. Deep Enough to Disappear. The man in the bed opposite is 83. He reminds me every morning. He reminds me of you. Deep enough to disappear a body, you'd said of the snow as sunrise pinched out the street lights. I was running out of gaps to slip through. My shadow wasn't right. It hitched over your window. I remember the first fall, awkward like half notes on a scale, before you started raising the dead, before your days darkened and your mind became a dog's anxious settling in a car. You made me apologize for a dark, sad thing someone else wrote, and it jolted like a criminal thought. To you, it was an hour ago, maybe a couple of weeks. I was a stranger, there to steal your boiled sweets and copper coins. Your med-swollen tongue said, "Let's make a game out of time," before telling me I wasn't welcome there because my shadow wasn't right. Thank you again. It's actually I'm quite enjoying the flutter that you see out the corner of your eye. The collapse is quite nice. I've got a little note here saying visual poems. I had a go in this book. There's usually been sort of one concrete poem or one bizarrely experimental poem in all of my books. But in this one, there's a few of them. Not many, but a few. And when I said that River Run Dark was the first proper poem in the book, it's because the first actual poem is this one, which you might not be able to see, but this is the poem that's called Nearly Man, and it's sort of nearly a man. He's thinner than me though. And there's another one that will probably have most of you groaning because you know, it's a bit on the nose, but the poem is called Not a Pipe, and that's what it looks like. Took an age to manage. It does follow Magritte's pipe very, very well. Well, Magritte's not pipe very well. But anyway, let's get on with it. We don't have much time. Stop distracting me with your silence. How dare you? This next one is called Something Sings. And actually, yeah, to my surprise, actually, I didn't realize how many poems in here were about my grandfather. But this was sort of about clearing out my grandfather's old house after he died. It's called Something Sings. Something sings in the woods behind my grandfather's old house. He told me he'd like to learn about that poetry. Lesson 1 might be specific. So let's say it's a swallow. A swallow sings in the woods where my granddad used to walk. Purposeful stride into the long grass, walking stick tucked under arm. He's pointing out trees and naming birds, perhaps to make them less strange. But the small boy with him, all knees and elbows, has no ears to offer. Just the hands he uses to clap at rabbits and startle squirrels. No ache yet in his knees or ribs, no stutter in his step, no scar on his head. I watch through the dust-tinseled window as the boy skips on invincible, too taken by butterflies to learn his granddad's names for things. But in the woods behind the house, something sings. Okay, and I'm about done. I've got two more left. I was going to say I have one more left, and then I'm going to sneak one in at the end. But actually, we're making good time. So I've got two more left. Yeah, I do feel like I should just say a quick aside for the fact that I keep saying a lot of this is about my mother, and none of the ones I'm reading are about that, but they are in there. God bless her. Yeah, not tonight, but they are in there. But yeah, this one though is an absolutely true story, almost a documentary practically, and it's called. And I think some of you will hopefully recognize some of the themes that are coming out here. It's set in a very magical place that many of us will have been to before, a magical place, Swedish place known as IKEA. It's called The Feral Kids of IKEA, and it is a true story. Take care whose hand you hold, reads a sign you don't notice as you leave IKEA, clutching more than you came for, still mourning that which you couldn't afford. You don't notice the yellow-blue warning, don't realize the child shuffling by your side is not the one you came in with. It's chittering and meatball scent not enough to unseat your focus from where you left the car. There's a cardinal rule in IKEA. You must follow the arrows. If you bypass the item you desire, you must go round again or arrange another pilgrimage. So you pick up tea lights, a silicon spatula, and curse the momentum that carried you past the purpose of your coming. Thousands of children are lost this way. Like Orpheus dooming Eurydice to the deep dark, children's not sticky enough fingers have slipped from clutches and away they've fallen, carried by the current of determined couples filling their first flats, of emotional fathers and uni-bound daughters, of withering marriages being patched up by a new rug or stainless steel wok. You can't turn back. Maybe that's why Orpheus didn't dive after her, the one he doomed with his need to see. You can hear them crawling, scuttling on all fours behind the partitions and over the tops of the shelves in the warehouse, the forgotten ones. They come out at night, talking in their unique language. Ferntig, Richtig, Ilga, Sparsum, Nitster. They line like pigs at the meatball fryer and scoop the gloop into filthy faces, heads twitching, listening for the shift workers. After a while, though, they grow bored of slops and shelves filled with the same book and long to leave. They creep along the rafters, waiting for one loose grip, one impatient child, one little slip. And as your child is pulled into the thrum of people seeking flat-packed dreams, one makes their move, grabs your hand, and keeps their eyes low. You can never go back. Of course, part of you notices as you look into those eyes, as you fasten your changeling into the car, a feeling in the stomach, a nagging worm behind your eye. What was it the sign said? Take care whose hand you hold. The child looks at you, smiles, and says, murder. Your panic ebbs a little as you realize, silly me, I forgot to pick up the tea lights. Oh well, next time, eh, Charlie? And you ruffle its greasy hair. Stinklerber, it says, and you close the door with a smile. Let's go home. Thank you very much. I'll just read one more before I make a plea for people to buy the books, or maybe I should do that now before I do this. I'm going to put a link in the chat before I read all of your hopefully lovely comments, but I don't know yet, to where you can purchase the book. You can buy it from my website, or hopefully buy it from Bob's website, Calder Valley Poetry, because this is no word of a lie. I do his website. That's actually how me and Wendy really got to know each other. She was having a bit of a panic on Facebook one day when I happened to be not working and wasting time, and she needed help with a WordPress site and basically tech support to the Poetry Stars. And so yeah, I already knew Bob at this point, but I set up his website for him so I can see all the sales he's making. Feel free to put it in the chat. In fact, yeah, feel free to pop in the chat before I read my next poem, or during if you don't want to listen to me. That's fine, but rude. And I'll be able to see when you posted it, so I will know. But how many copies do you think this book has sold on the Calder Valley Poetry website? It came out last week on my birthday, so last Thursday. But yeah, closest person gets a prize. But anyway, I'll finish with this one. Thank you so much for indulging me. As I said, there's a lot of themes in this one. One of them's a breakup, and this is about that. And it feels like a good farewell poem for the end of a reading. It's called A Little Left of Love. This might be where we say goodbye. And I wish there was more ceremony. A band, a firework, a sunset at least. In the end, we weren't where you wanted. A little left of love. This might be where we say goodbye, because we were a little left of love, and the little left of love isn't enough, and nor should it be. This might be where I say goodbye, because, in the end, we are fragile things, and like you probably knew, I have always been a little left of love. Thank you.
Steve, that was fantastic. Oh, just everything about it. The humour, the rambling, fantastic. Oh, and there's some really lovely comments in the chat, so do go and have a look at the comments.
I absolutely will. And just to say, Barry and Sarah were the closest with 50. It's and someone's just put the phrase "love that last one." They got the answer right. One copy he sold.
What? Not
One copy.
100,000.
Like just for the sake of Bob, like the man wants to retire. For the love of God, at the moment he probably can't because he's currently running at a loss. But if anyone would like to buy a book, like please do go to Calder Valley Poetry, because we've got the official launch at my university next week, which is largely going to be attended by students, and they have no
They're
money.
not going to buy it.
No, so I've managed to con them into coming with the promise that the uni's paid for free booze. But yeah, I can't look the man in the eye if we've only sold one copy, so I don't know what we'll do. But thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you read and see you read so confidently as well. It's really nice to see you in your element. Okay, well, so we're going to move on now into the second half, and we're going to begin with Catherine O'Neill. Catherine, can you make yourself known to me, please? Catherine? There she is.
Hello, yep.
Hello, hi.
Hello, hi. Hi, everybody.
Lovely to see you, lovely to have you here, and thank you
thank you.
for coming along to read for us tonight. I'm really excited to hear you read this poem, which is about the Sycamore Gap 3, and God, what an awful thing that was, wasn't it? Still, and it's almost like, time moves on and you sort of almost forget about it, and then as soon as you think about it, it's like, God, what an awful thing. I've just seen that 2 men have been in court, I think, over it this week. Anyway, so I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it, that where you hope that people are going to see what's going on in the world around them and make art from it and make literary art from it, which is exactly what you've done. So I'm really pleased to have this in the magazine. Let me introduce you properly. Catherine O'Neill writes poetry, short stories, plays, reviews, and is an editorial assistant for the Word Factory. She is currently editing her debut novel, Sooty Blotch. Catherine's play Networking was staged at Live Theatre. She had a short story broadcast on BBC Radio. She has had poetry published in Atrium and shortlisted by Northern Gravy. Catherine taught English for 18 years. She has a degree in English literature and an MA in creative writing. What a fantastic CV. I'm really looking forward to hearing you read, Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, so yeah, this was a shocking thing, I think, for everybody, and I felt really moved by what happened, and particularly the effort that must have gone into the destruction of this tree. And it was far away to get 2 people up there. It must have been 2 people. That was obvious from the outset. That really disturbed me, and particularly at the time we were having those red warnings about how climate change was at the point where it was going to tip and couldn't be stopped. So it seemed to me like we were doomed when that happened. So this was my response to it. So Sycamore Gap 20th of September 2023. More than leaf, branch, root, more than sap, bark, sway, solitary beauty, time o'er the laid, bearing bleakness. More than heather watcher, wall companion, star veiled, aurora clad, sentinel of ages. More than emblem of northern love, memory cradle, nestled in the rising fall of history, so vulnerable stoic. More than delight, rambler gatherer, felled upon our ancient ground, a country's grown, your knell. More than beauty, stranger still, fear of cruelty, splintered nature, more than abomination.
Fantastic. You really
Thank you.
caught that mood around it. Just brilliant. Really, really glad to have that in the magazine. Thank you.
you.
Okay, next up we have Gareth Ryder-Davies. Are you there, Gareth?
Yeah.
Hello, hi. And this is a really interesting one. This is a really special one because Gareth was second place in last year's Spelt poetry competition. So it's really nice to have Gareth here to read his poem for us tonight. I'm really pleased that you're here, Gareth. It's really nice to publish them in the magazine as well. You know, it's not a small thing to win a competition. We had a lot of entries as well. And if you go to the magazine, it's on page 39 and 38 and 37 and 36, I think, as well. We've got Jane Byrne, who was last year's judge, and she has made some really, really interesting comments about the poems and the judging process. So really pleased to have you here, Gareth. Let me introduce you properly. Gareth Ryder-Davies is from Brecon, Wales. He was shortlisted for the Bridport Prize 2014 and 2017, commended in the Prole Laureate competition 2015 and 21, and Prole Laureate for 2017. He was also commended in the Welsh Poetry Competition 2015 and highly commended in 2017. In addition to being the winner of the Wirral Festival Poetry Competition 2023, his publications include Bodies 2015, Crybaby 2017, Indigo Dreams, The Lover's Pinch 2018, The End 2019. I have no idea how to pronounce this. Usk, 2022. I knew I was going to mispronounce something terribly tonight. And there it was. Arenig Press. He was a Hawthornden Fellow in 2019. That is an incredibly impressive CV, Gareth. So thank you so much for giving up some time tonight to come and read for us, and you can take it away. Thank you.
Okay. Look, I was really chuffed to be second place in the competition. I also liked Wendy's very fair distribution of prize funds. Often, you know, you just dive off a diving board, second, third, and fourth places. So thank you for that as well. I put it to good use by buying a cat. Okay, we've got, that's a long story, and probably several poems. This poem came to me in a certain form, and then it just kind of grew and grew. It's in couplets, it's purposely rather sparse. But I think the judge mentioned that she liked the space. So, La vie rurale. Of course, it sent many to an early grave. The wages were terrible, the sodden thatch dripped. One didn't have much time to contemplate. There was too much to do. Beauty was in the cities, in museums, and La Marie. And if one looked up, it was to check the gravid clouds over a distant hill. The world is small, small in a village without track and rail, where grand-père burned mine and spread it on the absinthian fields. Bent thorns into hedges, stacked hay as high as a cockerel's crow, plowed a straight furrow to the measurement. The soil contains all you need to know. And as the blade turns and unearths coin, sword, and bones, his story reveals like a crop of cabbages, mined by moles. Grand-père was a slow fighter who found his way home to cattled grass and pregnant trees, and the mayor's daughter knocking on his door. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are just going to change the schedule a little bit, and I'm going to have Janet Lee's poetry film next. Helen's going to introduce that for us. So Helen, can you make yourself known to me?
Yep.
Hello, and just before we do pass over, I have an enormous apology for Janet because we have managed to cock up her bio. This is something that does happen. If you can imagine all of the work that we get in and how many bios we've got to fix, but it is really I'm sure it's really disappointing for her. So I'm going to, because there's two poets involved in this poetry film, the maker of the poetry film and the poet whose poem was used as the inspiration for the film. So I'm going to read Janet's, Helen, have you got Janet's bio there with you?
Not in front of me, no.
Right, well, I shall read it now to make sure everyone knows who Janet is. So Janet Lees is a poet and lens-based artist. Her poetry films have been selected for many festivals and screenings, including the Zebra Poetry Film Festival, the Aesthetica Art Prize, fantastic, and Photogenia. In 2021, she won the Obeel Poetry Film Competition, and in 2022, her work featured in the landmark exhibition Poets with a Video Camera, Video Poetry 1980 to 2020. Janet's art photography has been exhibited around the world and her poetry widely published in magazines and anthologies, including Magma, Lighthouse, and the Valley Press Anthology of Prose Poetry. That is a fantastic anthology, by the way, if you're looking for an anthology of prose poetry. In 2019, she won the Frosted Fire pamphlet competition, and I'm really delighted that Helen's going to be here to introduce this properly and talk a little bit about it. So thank you, Helen. Take it away.
Thanks, Wendy. So just to say before we see the film that this time around we selected two poetry films because they were two very different. The last film we saw, somebody commented in the chat about its close observation, and the next one, in contrast to that, has kind of vast imagery, and I've seen it on a very large screen, theatre style. And it works fantastically in that sort of environment. Poetry films can address monumental themes and issues, either through grand gestures or subtle shifts, and a large screen can amplify its impact, allowing for expansive and emphatic storytelling. And Blame the Fox by Janet Lees starts with an intro telling us that recent notable extinctions include the Little Tern, the Avocet, and Sanderling. And it's a hauntingly beautiful film, full of emotional energy. And while I start the screen share, Janet, I wonder if you want to say anything else about it.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Wendy. Thanks so much for doing my bio. Yeah, just to say that this is Jane Lavell's poem, which won the Rialto Prize last year, or 2022, I think, and it just absolutely possessed me, this poem, when I was I went out to film, and it lived with me for many weeks. So yeah, thanks, Helen.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Let's watch Blame the Fox. Thanks so much, Janet, for sharing that with us. Such a wonderful film. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Janet. That is, my goodness, absolutely stunning. Just so beautiful, just so clear, like a siren, just gorgeous. That combination of the sort of hazy landscapes and the voice, the singing in it as well. Oh, just beautiful. I'm so pleased that we're able to provide a platform for things like this, because it's so important. It's important to look at how different genres can cross over and sort of evolve poetry, especially rural poetry and nature poetry, which is what our main focus is. So thank you so much. Right, moving on. Kate, Arthur, can you make yourself known to me, please?
Hi. Hi.
Hello, hi. How are you?
I'm feeling a bit emotional after that poetry film. I have to say that was really stunning, and I'm sure that we all feel that, but that was extraordinary
It
stuff.
nearly made me cry as well. It was just so beautiful, moving in a way that it's difficult to vocalize why it's so moving. It just really, really was. Anyway, now we're on to you and your wonderful poem. I'm sorry I kept you waiting a little bit there, because we are so excited to be able to have Kate here tonight, because she actually won the first prize in last year's Spelt poetry competition with this absolutely stunning poem. I'm going to introduce you now, Kate, properly. Kate Arthur lives in County Down. She spent some years in the Cambridgeshire Fens, where she was Fenland Poet Laureate, and from where this poem emerged, she worked in collaboration with the fine art printmaker Iona Howard, which involved a lot of walking in the Fens with Meg and the dog. She has been published in The Tangerine, The Stinging Fly, and Black Box Manifold. She's working on her first collection, and if this poem is anything to go by, it's going to be absolutely brilliant. So I am so pleased to have you here. Thank you for coming along and reading your poem.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and it was such an honour to it be shortlisted for the competition, and such a surprise to win it. I'm incredibly grateful and an admirer of everything at Felt, and also Jane Byrne. It's lovely to be here tonight. I feel like I'm with my people. There are so many things that I've heard this evening that felt like I didn't have words for them, and you know they've come up tonight, and so I'm also glad it's recorded and I can listen back. So this poem was inspired by reading one of those little bits of signage at a place called Denny Abbey, which is in Cambridgeshire, about the Irish workers who were living in this building in the 19th century, in a medieval building. The Irish farmhands mourn the death of a child at Denny Abbey. The kine, neglected long past their milking hour, bellowing, heaving the pain past their lips, staggering under the heft of it. That is what it sounded like, the noise of them together that night. Or like a savage wedding, where all the guests turn one to another and clasp cold hands. There, a ring is slipped past the knot of bone, and they collapse into a shocking oneness. Candlelight flickers on the warm English stone of the nun's refectory. I search out the bestial stink of tallow to purge the sweeter note of the little body laid in its manger. I watch all this from the shadow of the doorway, the year of our Lord, 1850, and they say their rotting potatoes too give off the sweetness as they are scraped like broken eggs from their earth, so unlike the good fertile soil here. They were welcome to my father's land, with their wives and children, thin and staring-eyed as they were, to reap the corn, to hide their strange stories among the whispering sedge. glad to give them our barns to sleep in, and puzzled when they cooked outdoors. And who would not be sorry when one small boy, curled like a field mouse on a dry bed of reeds, could not be roused to take his turn with the scythe, whose wet earth would not welcome him as a choice morsel.
Just beautiful. Thank you so much. It's just such a good poem, an absolute worthy winner, and I'm so pleased that Jane chose it. And again, if you have a look in the magazine, Jane's judge's report is in there. She makes some really interesting comments about the poem. So thank you so much for coming along and reading tonight. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Okay, moving on. We are up to Daphne Milne. Daphne, can you make yourself known to me?
I'm here, Wendy.
Hello, lovely to have you here. Hi.
It's a delight to be here.
It's going really nicely, isn't it, tonight? It's always such a nice time at the Spelt launch. It's always such a friendly experience. I'm really pleased. What Kate was just saying about being around your people, it really feels like that, doesn't it? Right, so Daphne Milne, I'm really pleased to have you here tonight, and thank you for coming along and giving up your time to read for us. It's much appreciated. Let me introduce you. Daphne Milne has returned to the UK after 5 years in Australia. She was a Catherine Susanna Pritchard Fellow for 2021, nominated for the Forward Prize in 2022. Her pamphlet, The Blue Boob Club from Indigo Dreams, was selected as Book of the Month by the Poetry Kit, where Daphne was also invited to be a contemporary poet for 2020. Her pamphlet, The Busy Life of Buttons, is to be published by Jawbone Press in 2024. And I bet that's going to be fantastic. So thank you for coming along. I'll let you read your poem now, Daphne. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing me so beautifully, and it's lovely to see everybody. I've odd familiar face and certainly some names I know whose poems I've read. It's lovely. This is called Summer Fair. It's on page 9, by the way. High Street, close to traffic, is lined with stalls selling home-baked cakes, handmade pottery, second-hand books, tickets for the hospice dance, jam jar raffle. A rowing boat parked outside the co-op is surrounded. Small children elbow deep in wood shavings dig for treasure. Queues form in the churchyard for face painting, archery, fairy wings. Punch and Judy draws a crowd. Children of all ages, some grey-haired with walking sticks, wobbly on their feet as new-hatched toddlers. 2 shows, different scripts, all the essential characters. Punch, Judy, Ho-Faced Baby, Policeman, Toby Dog, and Crocodile. A ghost child leans against the bole of a yew tree, watches the baby being turned into sausages. A zip wire runs from church tower to the wall of an old white painted house 100 yards away beyond the trees. A small basket hauled up on a rope is big enough for your teddy bear, if he's brave enough. Edward would be brave enough if asked. But he's too old. Born in 1909. Health and safety would surely object. After dark, people saunter beside the river to the evening's entertainment on the quay. A scribble of sound from a saxophone, drums. The pub's open, giggly girls with sparkly hair, young men with pint glasses, babies in pushchairs, carefree grandmothers, all jive together. Small boys run circuits around the dancers. There's a smell of cider and bonhomie. A firework display should end the evening. Rain, which has threatened all day, finally decides to fall. Thank you.
That was lovely. Thank you. Just beautifully read again. Just wonderful. What a lovely poem to have in the evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve, I'm going to hand over to you for the next 2, which are both urban rural poems from your section. So I'll let you introduce those. Steve?
Yeah, I'm here. Which order are we going in?
We're going
Power.
Claire Booker first.
Oh, excellent, because that is what I have my page open to, so that's perfect. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, yeah, I did a while ago. I think I'm not sure quite how it started, but we started to get lots of poems that were really, really, really good, but didn't quite fit the Spelt brief for being about the rural, or maybe they were sort of a blend of things. And that's kind of what I'm fascinated by anyway, those sort of between spaces and where those things meet. I think being a bit of a rural boy at heart, but constantly having to live in cities or work in cities, sort of fascinated by the way these places connect. And so we have just these few pages each issue, or most issues, where we have this urban rural section. And yeah, Claire Booker has been published by us before, and I'm not going to waffle on too much about her poem. I have only a few pages. I think Wendy very graciously allows me 10, but I'm incredibly selective, I think, when it comes to the urban rural, and so we rarely get up to 10, because then I feel like I'm eating into what Spelt really is. But some of them are just too good to pass up. And Claire Booker's been published by us before, as I say, but she never fails to disappoint. But Claire fascinates me with her writing because I can't quite pin it down. It's always brilliant. It's always so visual, so tactile, something that you can almost feel and taste the poems, but they all seem completely different to me. If the name wasn't there, I wouldn't necessarily know it was a Claire Booker poem. Although if pushed, I might pick Claire just if it was really good. I'd be like, safe bet. Like when you hear a quote it's on the chase and it's like, who was this quote by? You might as well guess Winston Churchill because it was usually him. But yeah, I will introduce Claire and stop waffling because God knows you've heard me waffle enough tonight. So yeah, so I haven't done the Wendy thing though. That's the problem with this. Just hand it over, and I don't have the authority. Claire, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Steve. Thanks so much.
Excellent.
Do you know I'd never been compared to Winston Churchill before, but that's a first.
I mean, safe bet, 50-50 on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Winston Churchill, Claire Booker. But yeah, so I did that. I've realised why now. I did it the wrong way around, didn't I, Wendy? Sorry. I was supposed to do the bio first and then say Wendy's catchphrase, "Make yourself known to me," but don't yet, Claire. I'll introduce you first. Claire Booker lives in the village of Rottingdean near Brighton and is a medical herbalist. Her poems have been published widely, including Agenda, Finished Creatures, Magma, Rialto, The Spectator, Spelt magazine as well, if you please. Please update your bio.
Yes.
Claire. I don't know why you're so ashamed of it. On Guernsey buses and on Worthing Pier. She won the Poetry Society's 2023 stanza competition. Her collection of poems, A Pocketful of Chalk, was inspired by the South Downs and selected by the Poetry Book Society. More info and a blog at www.bookerplays.co.uk. Thank you very much, Claire. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Steve and Wendy. It's always a real pleasure to be in Spelt, and big apologies for the bio. That will be updated. So it's really interesting what you said, actually, Steve, about my poems. And I just try and find the shape of the poem according to what I'm writing about. So that, it'll be different. And this one is inspired really by, I have a lot of hope in the younger generation, because let's be honest, my generation is rather messed up the world. So it's really a kind of paean to young people who are out there trying to make things better. Earth clock. Down at the building site, bulldozers growl, advance, snaffle profit. Young voices circle the condemned tree, their breath in every branch, because nature's delicate mechanism has become an erratic heartbeat with only us to fix it. Perhaps love really can set this fat gold watch ticking to time again. The old gods mutter in the wings, bang their metal sheets and think it thunder, shooting the breeze of good intentions, while these warrior hearts bloody themselves on battles of apricot and fire. Thank you.
Wonderful. And yeah, I think that so comes through in your poems, because they are all wonderful, and that idea of finding the shape I think really comes through, Claire. Thank you so much, and it's great to hear you actually read your work as well. Next up, we've got Sarah Claire Conlon. Are you with us, Sarah Claire? I can see you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hiya.
Welcome, and I think you might be a first timer in Spelt. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Wendy. And thanks to Helen also.
More than welcome. And yes, this is our second and final of the urban rural poems. And I honestly won't ramble on this time because I don't know what to say about this poem. If you've got your magazines in front of you, this is on pages 33 and 34. And usually the urban rural ones are very small. And that might be partly because I'm very lazy and I'm the one who has to put all this stuff on paper. And the longer they are, the more awkward it is. But this poem came in and I could not get it out of my head. For anyone who doesn't have a copy of the magazine, I mean, I'll let Sarah Claire explain if she wishes to, but it's the short prose poems almost. It's called Roars, and there's 5 of them. And they fascinated me. But I will give you an intro. So, Yorkshire-born Sarah Claire Conlon was writer-in-residence at Ilkley Literature Festival and Victoria Baths in Manchester, where she lives. Her latest pamphlet, Loon, from Red Ceilings Press, is a Poetry Book Society Winter 2023 selection. It follows Using Language from Invisible Hand Press and Cash Cash from Contraband, a Poetry Book Society Winter 2022 selection, plus prose collection Marine Drive from Broken Sleep Books. Salt Prizes winner and Bridpoint Prize shortlisted, her work has appeared in numerous anthologies, journals, and exhibitions.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's 5 roars. They're each 100 words long. So, and they're set in different places: Manchester, Ilkley, Frodsham. Yeah, anyway, I shall go. Roars. Roar 1. The roar from the tree is visceral, visible like a train shooting out of a tunnel, displacing air, pushing its horn, warning ahead, shaking itself free of the weight of the mountains. The sycamore's shape is white noise against the big sky, the fuzz of an untuned television in the 80s, the wind rippling the leaves, ripping the leaves, stripping the leaves. If the tree gives up and crashes to the ground, will there be a tree-shaped hole against the big sky in our snapshot memories, or will someone select magic wand from the tool panel and make believe it over? Roar 2. A wind chime jangles in a garden along the street and the trees bend abruptly right. An aeroplane rumbling off Ringway, pushing up and across towards its holiday destination. Its bow wave of displaced sky urging ripples into the boughs, clattering leaves to the paving stones, white blossom drift muffling the lawn. A displaced flash of rose-ringed parakeet cuts up a heron, shivering the suburbs' ponds with its medieval shouts and looming shadow as a cloud smothers the sun, lulling the roars. An ambulance sings out, a pelican crossing pings its warning, another aeroplane rattles a few miles away, resetting the cycle. Roar 3. Tarmac screams, especially in summer. Let's stand on the bridge and see who waves, what creates most turbulence, bending reed beds back on themselves, setting off crows, black rakes against yellow rape fields. Roaring trucks are most productive on both fronts, I suppose you guessed. Twin axle tourers not bad. For contrast, a tractor straddled by a sprayer creeps cropwards in the opposite direction, scattering small mammals, whichever way, screeching. Black smoke, brake dust, tyre marks, skidding, sliding, shuddering, standstill. 6 striations scar the landscape. Imagine the weight of the guilt of the historic diggers, the incantations of the turning caterpillar tracks. Roar 4. A flash of yellow emerges from foamy heads of ornamental cow parsley, flat platforms for honeymakers. A hum follows the tram. Another level train rattles encumbered cambers on buckled sleepers. A trio of geese roars into land on the canal below. The viaduct is coaxed back to life, plants replacing points, selected shrubs and seasonals squeezing between bridges, crisscrossing the voids above mizzled cobbles. Self-seeded buddleia and wild cherries look down on the curated offerings from crenellations. Apple trees pop up where cores flew from cranked windows. Creeping gentrification and tarted up till borders not able to scrub former banksides completely. Raw 5. It seems like the edge of the world down here on the marsh, where the land meets the almost sea, the estuary. The tanker carves its course over ploughed pockets of soil, past murky pools of ship canal sludge, rumbling turbines echoing around the channel. The banks are studded with other turbines, wind. Stand still and let the rush of the paddles muffle the roar of the motorway. Spy the circling shadows casting their spell over the petri dish ponds, chemical works twinkling on the horizon. Our heron hero flies by, wings beating slowly, silently, swirling the air before it. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Just fantastic. Like such momentum in the series. Just wonderful. And well done for getting through them and reading them all. And such pace as well. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, we are moving on to the last of our contributor poets tonight. Jade, are you there? Make yourself known to me.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Oh, here we are. This is the last poem before our guest reader, and it's really nice to have you here, Jade, and I just love your poem. I'm so excited to have you reading with us tonight, so thank you for coming along and giving up your time for us. Let me introduce you properly. Jade is a writer of Shona Zimbabwean and British heritage. As well as poetry, she writes short fiction, non-fiction, and novels for young adults that centre neuro-expansive characters of colour. We need more work like that, don't we? Her work appears in Lowry, 14 Poems, Juno Magazine, Attitude, Scholastics, Bedtime Stories, Beautiful Black Tales from the Past, and others. In 2020, she won first prize in Nottingham Writers Studios short story competition. She is represented by Abby Fellows at DHH Literary Agency. Jade Muchkara, we are so pleased to have you here tonight. Thank you for joining us, and I'll let you read your poem now. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, everybody. I've had such a lovely time listening to everybody's poems and the videos as well. Thanks. So this is for you who forgot how to swim. For you who won't be taught, I offer you a lesson in asking to be supported by the ripples in a pond. I offer you a lesson in letting yourself be cradled by the ripples in a pond when toes can't reach ground. Allowing yourself to be cradled, a cloud-stuffed sky for a quilt, especially when you can't feel ground, slows the blood to a liquid sigh. Beneath a cloud-stuffed quilt, cold water sharpens soft minds. Blood slows to a liquid sigh, full and wordless all at once. Cold water softens sharp minds into spaces only for birdsong, full but wordless for once. Taps hold cold water, but even you who won't be taught know there's no space for birdsong or for being supported in a sightless steel sink. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I just absolutely love that, and really beautifully read as well. Thank you. Okay, we are running a little bit late, but I'm sure you won't want to miss the next reader, which is our second guest for the evening, Sharon Black. Sharon, can you make yourself known to me, please?
That should be me. Is that
Hello,
okay?
hi. Do you know, everybody's got such fantastic glasses tonight. I'm so jealous. Mine are so boring. I'm not even wearing mine. Oh, no, I'm not wearing mine. Right. Okay, so we have this fantastic reading from Sharon tonight, and we are running a little bit late, but I know you want to hang about to see her and hear her. Sharon is going to be our first guest on the Spelt podcast, which is going to be our Substack, and that should, fingers crossed, as long as I can get my head around the technology, will be going live on Monday. So I'm really pleased. And this is during the interview, during the podcast, we talk about Sharon's book, The Last Woman Born on the Island, among other things about Sharon's life and how she lives her life as an artist, as a writer. So I'm really pleased to introduce you to Sharon tonight and to have her here, giving up her time for us to read some poetry. Now then, let me introduce you properly. Sharon Black is from Glasgow and lives in a remote valley in the Cevennes Mountains in France. Her poetry is published widely and she has won many awards for her work, including first prizes in the Guernsey International Poetry Competition 2019 and the London Magazine Poetry Prizes 2019 and 2018. Her collections are To No Bedrock, Pin Drop 2011, The Art of Egg, Two Ravens 2015, Pin Drop 2019, The Red House, Drunk Muse 2022, and The Last Woman Born on the Island, Vagabond Voices 2022. She also has a pamphlet, Rib, with Wayleaf Press in 2021. Since 2016, she has been editor of Pin Dropped Press. So we are really excited to have you here to celebrate your work tonight. Sharon, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Wendy. That was a lovely introduction. And I'm very, very happy to be here. So I'm going to read a few poems from the collection that you just spoke about there, which we talked about in our podcast at some length, The Last Woman Born on the Island. And I'm just going to kick off with the titular poem. It's in two parts. The Last Woman Born on the Island, 1. She's soft as a caught rag. In the palm of your hand, she's a comma, an apostrophe, plucked from a passage written in wool. Tease her apart, and she's smoke plume, a child's scribbled thundercloud. She's a snag of sheep, the kind bred for centuries at the edge of the world. Her stink on your fingers lasts long after you've put her aside. She's dark as night, as the pitch into sleep and the dreaming that follows, a tide of remembering most often forgotten by light. 2. I'm soft as basalt, as a raven's bill, a wreck, a rare find. I fall straighter than you might expect, from hand to ground, from sound to silence, an all-seeing pupil under a shut lid. Coaxed apart, you think you see through me, but all you see's the other side. My heart's in each particle, each cell of the bright lump in the black chest of the island I'm from, the one you'll never find. I'm nowhere, everywhere, shedding sand like grains of light. So that is the poem that kicks off the collection. It's a collection that I wrote. It was really a gathering of poems that I had written about Scotland, where I'm from. As you said there, Wendy, I'm from the Cevennes, I live now rather in the Cevennes in the south of France, in the middle of nowhere. And I've often felt that my spiritual home was the Highlands of Scotland, even though I'm from the city. And so I had over the years written a lot of poems about the Highlands, possibly partly because I live somewhere else. And so I find that when I come back, there's more potency when I go up to that part of the country than maybe there otherwise would be. Anyway, I'm not long back, actually, just about a week ago, from a long walk that called the Speyside Way, which connects Newtonmore in the Cairngorms with Buckie on the Murray coast. And 10 years ago, I walked the West Highland Way. So this next poem is about that experience. It's called West Highland. If I were to lie back, this is the landscape I'd become. Blanched tussocks, copses of pine, shining lochs, station platform signs translated to a language I can't pronounce. Lazy fences, serious houses, 2 shaggy rams by a pleated auburn stream, alder, beech and dithery aspen, Munros shouldering the lost weight of snow. A blaze of gorse along the verge, pylons marching over bog and moor. The 96 miles we walked last year with backache, slippery from sweat and midge spray, the crack of good friends keeping us upright as we lost and found the way. God, that really was, I was broken by the end of the West Highland Way, absolutely physically broken. And I did in fact walk it almost from day 2 to day 7 with the most appalling backache. Luckily, the Speyside Way wasn't quite so challenging, so I managed to do that without doing myself any damage. So during the course of writing this collection, I did a bit of research into some of the traditions and aspects of Scotland's, especially the West Coast, the Highlands, heritage, some mythology, basically anything I could get my hands on in the way of stories about that part of my homeland. And as a result, there's a few poems sprinkled through the book which deal with things like the Cealach old woman myth of how islands were created by her dropping rocks from a bag she carried, or the herring girls who used to follow the shoals of herring and the ships, gathering them, and they would do the gutting and the preparation of the herring. The one I'm going to read is about a tradition of knitting the woolen jumpers that fishermen used to wear in Scotland, and probably still do, called ganses. They're made of strong water-resistant wool, and they typically have, or they used to, a pattern of some kind related to island tradition or fishing across the chest. And partly that was to decorate the jumpers, and partly they often had, every community or village had its own symbol, so maybe an anchor or a starfish or something related to the water. And it was a way for, among other things, for bodies to be able to be identified if they were washed up somewhere else. People could trace where they came from back to the village by the symbol on the front. And the only other thing to mention about this poem is that Eriskay is a small Scottish island in the Outer Hebrides, sort of just above the bottom. It's called Eriskay Wives. On clear days, the Minch is a navy gansey laid flat to the horizon. A downturned palm can almost feel the warmth of a man's chest, his heartbeat. When wind swoops in, nudging sacks of herring meal, stacks of peat, and creels pulled clear of the water's edge, the sea's a rumpled sleeve of plain and pearl. It's the other days, when even gulls and kittiwakes take shelter, when door frames yowl and stone weights stutter on the thatching, that the island holds its breath. Stars are guttered lanterns, clouds are hulls, and rain threatens to unravel the rows of knitted panels. Horseshoe, starfish, anchor, net. It's then we fetch our yarn, keep our fingers busy with a gansey for the eldest, for his brother, for the youngest on his way. The click of whalebone, our covenant that as long as we're still knitting, the sea can't take them. The thread between us can't be lost. 5-ply passing through our fingers from the deep skeins on our laps. So I love sheep. I love cats and I love chickens and I love sheep. And I love that in the Highlands there are so many sheep everywhere, pretty much everywhere you look. And the indigenous, well, I don't know about indigenous, but the race of sheep called the Hebridean sheep is black. This is called Hebridean. Out of the ash steps a bruise and another, now a mob, helter-skelter, into the eye of macher and sand, of marram and sod, until they come to the sea, where flames can be seen on far-off shores. They shake the ash from their coats and their hooves, and uprise the scars and the bones of shepherds, of spinners, of weavers, of thatchers, of boat builders, peat cutters, gull trappers, egg gatherers, neck menders, fishermen. Uprise the broken and the banished in a single plume. And what's left is blacker than sleep. Out of the ash step the sheep. I, until about 3 years ago, went every year for about a decade to the island of Iona, which is on the west coast of the larger island of Mull. And I used to do a wonderful week-long writing retreat there with a woman called Roselle Angwin. I haven't been back for a couple of years, but this poem was written on Iona, about Iona. If anybody has been there, you might recognize some of the landmarks. It's called Passing It On. I bring my blue to the island. I leave it along the path to the community shop, the abbey, the graveyard, the new builds and the spar. I lay it at the old stone cross, scatter handfuls of it on wild garlic at the rookery. The more I give away, the bluer I get. I knit it into socks and scarves, paint it into coastal scenes on canvas and on craft shop mugs. One morning after breakfast, I walk into the sea. Nobody notices I'm gone. Nobody sees the horizon breaking. I'm going to move on and read a poem from the collection that came out before, well, actually simultaneously to The Last Woman Born in the Islands. I mean, the timing couldn't have been more either awful or serendipitous, depending on which way you look at it. I did my best to get them published at different ends of the year. And this one here kept getting sort of pushed forward, and this one kept getting pushed back and took back. And so I received my author copies literally the same week. So it didn't feel like such a bad thing in retrospect. I mean, nobody really wants to have to think about promoting a book two at the same time. It kind of, maybe dilutes the other. But I kind of like it because this one here reflects my Scottish self, and this one here reflects my French self. It's all about living in this part of the south of France where I've been now since 2001. So that's 23 years. I can hardly believe it. We used to work quite closely with a woman from the village called Julie. And this is called Julie Who Knows Everything. Slender as a hazel switch, she sails around in pantaloons, talks non-stop as she stirs a ratatouille, spins a salad, sprinkles coriander. She wipes a pout, tucks a shiny braid behind one ear. At midday, unpeels her apron, lowers outsized shades, rolls her own, and tells us what we need to know. Where to find the best morille, how to treat a tick bite, which garage has the plummest deal for strimmers, how much the chateau sold for, how long to steep a barrow full of nettles, which wines are sulfate-free. She knows green clay cures tummy aches. A daily dose of leaven staves off colds. The dark drips on our fireplace are tannin leaked from burning oak. That the hunters are all pissed on pastis on the Col de l'Escalier. She honks and waves, off to clean for Alain, to prune Marie's roses, cash in hand, declaring just enough to claim a pension, knowing all the recipes to make ends meet. And I'm going to finish off with a couple of poems. So I'm in Glasgow at the moment, actually. I've been doing the walk in question, the Speyside Way. And then I was at this wonderful writing centre called Moniac Moor near Inverness, which I thoroughly recommend. And now I'm in Glasgow, staying with my folks who are here, literally in the same room as I am. And I thought, since I was here, I would read another poem about Scotland, specifically part of Glasgow where I'm from, which is on the south side, and then a final poem which is set up in the Highlands again. So these are from my next collection, which is kind of I've sent out at the moment and I'm waiting to hear back about. The title, its working title, is Things That Fruit in Darkness. And this poem here is called Baggies. And for those who don't know, a baggie is West Coast Scots, particularly Glasgow, for a large minnow with a rounded belly. Baggies. Baggies in the Nowes Road burn, baggies in the boating pond. Baggies in the Nowes Road burn, baggies in the boating pond at Rook and Glen. Baggies in a jam jar, string knotted round the rim. Baggies in the fishbowl where the goldfish used to swim. Baggies in the marshes on the Fenwick Moor, baggies on the beaches of Ayr and Largs and Troon, baggies in the puddle in the Kirkhill playground after school, baggies in the soda stream, the iron brew, the long glass of cremola foam, baggies in the pink basin, pink bidet, pink tub, baggies in the sink among the tatties where the spurtles dunked, baggies on the creaky wooden clothes horse, baggies in my school skirt's charcoal pleated hem, baggies in the coal bunker where February booms, baggies in my mother and my father and their people before them, baggies in the stone dikes, in the neep fields, in the lum, baggies in the bloodstream, baggies on the tongue. They're both sitting here laughing away. Okay, and my final poem is, so recently, about 2 years ago, I was lucky enough to be able to buy a little property, which I dreamed about for years and years, up in the Highlands, which I go to every summer, partly to get away from the heat in the south of France, and partly just to kind of get a break from everything and do some writing. And I usually don't take a car with me because I don't have a car here and I would have to hire one and that would cost a lot of money. And also because I like relying on public transport and maybe doing a little bit of hitchhiking. And so when I get up there, I get the train up to Fort William and then get the bus from Fort William down to Struntian, where the house is. And these little buses are absolutely tiny. They only hold about 12 people. And this particular time, the ferry was cancelled because you can normally go across by ferry, but the ferry was off. And so the driver was taking an alternative route down a road which had probably more potholes in it than flat tarmac. Bit of an experience. I thought, you know what? I'll turn that into a poem. So this is Shield Bus 509, Fort William to Cochwin. The driver is an Allen key. He takes the bus round bends. It hums with burning cylinders, a smell of steel on steel, the meow of a cat in heat, the taste of tangerines gone rotten. His name is Lawrence, used to be a drill instructor. We tear across Glen Tarbert. Last week he told a group of boys to pick up all their M&Ms or he'd beat the living shit out of them. This wifey complained I was driving too fast, went after heat each time I shifted gear. Manager called me and I said, you don't like it? You can take your job and stuff it up your arse. Ferry cancelled, the detour round Lochiel adds 30 minutes. Lawrence frees his seatbelt, soars above the wheel. The 509 careens, sparks up gravel along a single track, pitted with screech halts. The loch is hammered silver. One by one, the passengers step off until I am the last left. The Allen key, turning anti-clockwise, loosens off a hexagonal head, undoes a passing place, a howling corridor. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to read tonight.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen to you read. And there's some lovely comments in the chat, which I've just been reading through. Just absolutely fantastic. And I knew it was going to be beautiful. It was just brilliant. So your poems, I want to live in them. They're fantastic, just gorgeous and really beautifully read as well. I could listen to you forever. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming along tonight, for giving up your time on a Friday evening, for coming and supporting Spelt. I hope you're going to go away and buy Sharon's books and Steve's books and obviously Spelt magazine, which is why we're all here. Thank you to the contributors. Thank you to Steve. Thank you to Helen. Thank you to Sharon as well for coming along and giving up time tonight to help us celebrate Spelt. I can safely say that Spelt is officially launched now. Cheers. Pink Gin is out. And I hope you will have a look at our Substack and the podcast, and also the Spelt Poetry Competition, which is now open for entries, and Spelt 11 is now open for submissions. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to take my leave of you and let you go and enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.